Story 1. Odd take. The original ending of Secondhand Lions was thankfully left on the cutting room floor, but it exists online. It is a ludicrously bad montage of all fantastic characters from Hub stories turning out at the funeral one by one. The French Foreign Legion appears with a mounted honor guard and prances around on horseback. The wicked sheik arrives in a wheelchair, and so on. The ending we received was much more subtle and bittersweet. Story 2. Hancock. The first two-thirds was a not bad look at the idea of a being with superpowers who had no interest in being a superhero or villain. Then the movie took a sharp turn into some really weird, tacked-on plot twists. Story 3. I Am Legend. The new movie ending revealed the entire plot, ensuring Will Smith would be the hero regardless of the story. Story 4. Unpopular opinion regarding a classic Hollywood film, My Fair Lady. I absolutely detested Henry Higgins. When Eliza came back after he admitted, only to himself, how important she was to him, he put on his condescending act and demanded she find his slippers as she smiled at him. Yuck. Story 5. Now You See Me, 2013, was great fun until the reveal, which makes even less sense the more you think about it. Story 6. As a kid, I loved all the Oz books where Oz was real. I never forgave the movie The Wizard of Oz for having it all turn out to be a dream. What was the point of it all then? Story 7. Solo. A Star Wars story. The film needed a darker ending. The rebels that Han Solo helps should have been wiped out, and Han and Chewbacca should have barely survived. This would create a retroactive payoff in Star Wars Episode 4. A New Hope, when Han says Luke should come with him because the rebellion was a lost cause, then returns at the end. The ending as it is makes Han seem more cowardly in A New Hope. Story 8. X-Men Origins Wolverine. The first two acts were good. The third act and the flawed version of Deadpool ruined the overall film. Story 9. My first thought was Man of the Year. Robin Williams plays fictional Jon Stewart, and he wins the presidential election. It turns out the voting machines looked at the double letters in each candidate's name, sorted alphabetically, and voted for the one highest on the alphabet. If you have ever looked sideways at a programming language, that is not something a machine can do accidentally. And, if I recall correctly, it was an accident. Granted, I saw it once when it came out in 2006, so maybe it was bad beyond the ending, but I cannot and will not forget such a foolish ending. Story 10. Glass. A disappointing ending to a decent trilogy. You can defeat Bruce Willis with a puddle? There is a secret organization that eliminates people with powers? What? Story 11. High Tension is a great slasher movie that plays with some of the tropes in an effective way. The third act is intense and gripping. However, the ending is an early 2000s style twist that does not make sense and detracts from the movie. Story 12. Personally, for me it was Longlegs. I was looking forward to it and thought it was really good until the very ending. Story 13. Darkness Falls was so good at the beginning and into the middle that I was sure I was going to be thinking about it a lot. It ended with a fiery punch that took me out of the movie, and I never felt any fear from it. Story 14. According to a friend who hasn't read the books, Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. What? That's it? 3 hours for that. I had to explain to her that it comes in 3 movies. So when will we see the second movie? Next year. What? Story 15. Remember Me. The only time I have ever shouted at a movie screen in simultaneous shock and horror and all the feelings. Story 16. The Vanishing. The 1988 French-Dutch original was very good and quite scary, especially the ending. However, the 1993 American remake by the original director was completely ruined by adding a Hollywood happy ending, which destroys the horror of the original. Story 17. Secret Window. It was a great thriller until they gave up at the ending. Halfway through the movie, I asked myself, what if they explain it this way? The way they did? No, they won't do that. It is too cliché and would ruin it. Yes, they ruined it. Story 18. Joker 2. I was enjoying it, yes, even the musical parts, and wondering why everyone was criticizing it. Then it got to the final act and I understood. Story 19. Kind of prudish and it does not ruin the movie for me. There is so much good stuff in it. But I remember at the end of Kingsman, they make a big deal about this man having sex with a woman as his reward for saving her. It is so awkward and they put so much focus on it. Totally unnecessary, yet I guess the writers, producers, and director fought for it to be in the final cut for some reason. Did they have a raunchy joke quota they needed to fulfill? Story 20. Scream 6. Such a cool opening kill, and the first two-thirds are very good. Some of the best, most tense scenes and kills in the franchise. But as soon as the third act begins and the killers are revealed, the film loses its impact for me and has diminished any desire I have to rewatch it. Story 21. Yesterday is not well known because the ending was so disappointing that it did not become popular. The movie is about a man who wakes up one day and is the only person who remembers the Beatles. It has a creative premise and builds a really interesting narrative, but the ending is boring, poorly written, and unsatisfying, which ruins the whole story. Story 22. Rat Race. For some reason, my copy always ends just as they arrive at the Smash Mouth concert. It's strange. Story 23. Ocean's 8. All these talented, capable women, and you have a man come in at the end and do the actual stealing? To top it off, you only get away with it because James Corden decides to look the other way. No thank you. Story 24. Signs. I mean, those aliens came billions of miles, conquered the whole planet in the blink of an eye, and did not realize they could not handle water, one of the most common substances on the planet. The same applies to War of the Worlds and a virus. Both were nonsensical. Story 25. Lucy. One of the first films I really bought into the premise, I suppose. I was very excited to see it when it came out, but then she turned herself into a USB at the end. I could not believe it. Plus, looking back, they wasted Morgan Freeman in a minor role. Story 26. Greta. I'm still mad about it. I don't even remember everything that upset me anymore, but I do remember one of the final lines being one of the girls saying, "Should we call the police?" And the other one replying, "No, they wouldn't believe us anyway. You have all the evidence, including a hidden secret room. What do you mean they won't believe you?" Story 27. I would say The Last Samurai. If Tom Cruise were not such an egomaniac, he should have died among those he shared the battlefield with and died with honor. He is the one to survive out of all the warriors who were better than him. I do not know. I have not seen it since I saw the sneak preview more than 20 years ago. Otherwise, it would have been an epic movie. Story 28. Now You See Me has such a bad ending it spoils the entire movie. They did the same thing on the sequel, making the whole world created for the movie uninteresting and somehow making the first movie seem even worse. Story 29. For me, it was definitely Tag. The whole movie is a funny, light comedy about adult friends goofing around, playing a game of tag they started as kids. At the end, you learn that one of them has cancer and it is their last time playing. When I rented this movie, I wanted something fun and light, not something that would make me feel bad at the end. Story 30. The film adaptations for Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children and a series of unfortunate events both started out on track to be decent adaptations, only to completely botch the endings. Story 31. I would not necessarily call it a good movie, but the ending of the Hannah Montana movie bothered me at 13 and it bothers me now. From the very beginning, the primary conflict is whether Miley is going to give up being Hannah. I never believed she would, and the movie did not convince me that she would. She revealed her secret in front of the entire town, and they all swore they would never tell. I find that unbelievable. Someone would have sold her out if offered enough money. Also, by the time the movie premiered, season 4 of the television show had already gone into production, so I knew there was no way she was going to stop being Hannah unless the show wanted to address the fallout of that secret being revealed, which I did not think they would. Story 32. Jeremiah Johnson. The ending was not actually bad. It was just so soul-crushingly sad that it ruined the movie for me. I thought it was going to have a happy ending, and I was very wrong. Story 33. The Ninth Gate is a noir-style hunt for a book rumored to be co-authored by Lucifer. Essentially, the whole movie is an international treasure hunt, and once the puzzle is solved, we see the protagonist walking to where the prize is, and the movie ends. Perhaps they could not think of a good way to conclude it. I listened to the original book, and neither did the author, which is frustrating. The entire movie builds up to this moment, and we do not even get to see what happens. Similarly, I have the same complaint about 13 Ghosts. It was not necessary to kill Shalhoub. Lillard had already died saving someone and perhaps could have been the 13th ghost. At the end, Shalhoub has his family and nanny, which is positive, but also a few dead bodies in his new house and financial troubles unless he returns to sell some contents. We also do not see what happened when the machine was turned on. The machine was not supposed to open a gate to hell, although it could have been, considering it was a spell with complicated components including hard-to-find, specific, murderous ghosts. It seems more complicated than Hellboy's ritual of hell on Earth. Again, all that build-up had no payoff regarding the treasure hunt. Story 34, The Abyss. Such a great movie. Utterly plausible in every respect. Ed Harris at his best. Stunning Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. An underwater chase scene that makes the French Connection's famous chase look weak. And aliens. Everything entirely believable until the end. I thought, what? Did the writers get hit by a bus? And they let Leonard finish the script? Or maybe they just wrote themselves into a corner. Spoiler. They are at the bottom of the sea, cannot be rescued out of air, and then the aliens save them by bringing the entire underwater research complex to the surface. Our brains should be exploding from decompression sickness. I guess the aliens just did something to us. Story 35. Not my opinion, but an observation of others. I saw the Blair Witch Project in theaters when it came out. Maybe there was a disconnect between the origins of the film and its marketing, but that audience was definitely expecting some sort of Hollywood-type ending. When the ending finally came, the theater erupted in shouting. 2 kids in the row in front of me leaped out of their chairs and shouted, "Nonsense," while throwing whatever refreshment containers they had. It was such an unexpected reaction. I just laughed to myself. That audience thought the ending was really bad, and I imagine many people there held in suspense expecting to see the big bad, which left the theater angry. Story 36. Late Night with the Devil started as a great and original concept for a found footage movie. However, towards the end, it breaks the fourth wall, and the conclusion presents a strange change in perspective. While it clarifies the story, it does not align with the preceding hour and 15 minutes. Story 37. Tim Burton's take on Planet of the Apes was by no means a masterpiece, but that ending scene made zero sense. It was clearly inserted just for the shock factor. Story 38. Gangs of New York. I know people have a lot of issues with Cameron Diaz's accent and other aspects of it, but Daniel Day-Lewis's performance as Bill the Butcher and his feud with Amsterdam were so captivating. It builds to this giant, epic, honorable fight between the two, where the conclusion is cannonball shrapnel to the gut from a warship. Story 39. Sunshine. Imagine if 2001, A Space Odyssey suddenly turned into Jason 10. Also, the Will Smith movie I Am Legend, although the cut alternate ending made it a lot better. Story 40. The Kids Are All Right is a good movie, but the way Mark Ruffalo's character is pushed aside left a bad feeling. That is how I remember it. It has been years since I have seen it. Story 41. The Deliverance started out strong, but the ending felt totally out of left field, as if it were written by someone else to tack on that specific conclusion. I admit I have a strong bias against the Christian overtones, but aside from that, it did not fit with the rest of the movie at all. Earlier, Ebony makes some comments about her mother's late-life religiosity, saying, "This does not undo all the things you did when I was a kid, and religion is just your latest addiction." Then suddenly, at the end, Ebony proclaims how much she believes in God to solve all her problems. Suddenly, her son stops being possessed, she miraculously loses her drinking problem, and her marriage improves. Story 42. The movie Don't Breathe. I was so on board with the old blind man defending himself and his home. My dad is blind, so I really connected with the character, up until we get to his basement and the inappropriate device comes out. I disliked that movie. It did not have to go that way. It was so great without that. Story 43. The Abyss. When they came out of the water, it looked like plastic McDonald's playground items that were used because they ran out of special effects budget. Story 44. Shoot Me for This. but I always thought the end of Training Day was disappointing. Ethan Hawke's character should have had the duffel bag at the end to show that he was more crooked than Denzel Washington's character, and that the student became the teacher. Story 45 might be a weird answer, but up in the air. I remember being very angry during the last 25% of the movie because I felt like the filmmakers pulled the rug from under the audience just for the sake of a twist. Vera Farmiga being married with kids. By the end of the film, George Clooney's character is a shell, still flying around to fire corporate employees in person, but now completely without a sense of identity. Juxtaposed with Anna Kendrick's character getting hired and the interviews with real people finding new jobs after layoffs, the experience was jarring and unwelcome, so I never watched it again. Maybe I would have a different opinion on it now. I don't know. Story 46. Law-abiding butler. Watched Gerard Butler go on this intense revenge spree for 2 hours. I got completely invested in his character's journey, and then they chickened out with that courtroom ending. It was like they were afraid to fully commit to the dark path they had been building toward. Such a cop-out. Story 47. For me, it was Season of the Witch with Nicolas Cage. I was warned that it was a terrible movie, but for some reason my wife and I still rented it. I remember watching it and loved it throughout, thinking, how could anyone call this a bad movie? It wasn't a 10 out of 10, but it was worth a Redbox rental. They are transporting a little girl that everyone believes is a witch in a medieval setting. The entire time you question, is she really a witch? Does magic exist in this universe? Is she just messing with people? Is she not involved at all? Is she using non-magical means, maybe just drugging people or something? You get wrapped up in the mystery. Then they end the movie with them arriving at a monastery. The monks are all dead. And no, she is not a witch. She is a demon. She resurrects the dead monks for a 20-minute action movie zombie fight. It was so out of left field, with bad effects, bad choreography, just bad. It was like the writers got to the end of the film, didn't know how to end it, and just went, forget it, Hollywood fight scene. Story 48. The ending of Prince Caspian was so bad that it affected the rest of the film. I will never understand why they thought a Susan and Caspian romantic subplot was a good idea, but that alone made it terrible. Removing that from the ending and all the related tension throughout the film would have made it excellent. Story 49. Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. It was on track to being the only movie in the prequel trilogy that I actually liked, and then Padme names both of Anakin's children on screen, spoiling one of the greatest movie plot twists in history, only to then die of a broken heart. Give me a break. Then Vader rises, and it is awesome again for about 30 seconds, only to be ruined by no. Story 50. Fall. A terrible twist that ruined everything that came before and makes you not care about anything after. Story 51. Splice. That ending was so gross and awful it not only ruined the rest of the movie for me, it also ruined Adrian Brody and Sarah Polley for me forever. Story 52. Encanto. The last 3 minutes of that movie undermines everything it said before. The message changed from putting pressure on your children to always do well and caring more about making your family look good to others than your children's well-being will ultimately tear your family apart, to actually, you can do whatever you want because your actions do not have consequences. Story 53. Life of Pi. Did it actually happen? I don't know, but it made for a cool story. No, don't make me watch a whole movie and then end it as if everything was made up. Story 54. Kingsman. The Secret Service. That movie was fun and entertaining, but at the very end, they made an unfunny and inappropriate joke. The rest of the movie does not have many sexual jokes, so it feels out of place. I love that movie, but that joke has always bothered me. Story 55. Watchmen. Such a great adaptation was absolutely ruined by the ending, where Adrian did not show any doubt about his peace lasting after talking with Dr. Manhattan. Story 56. The turning undermines itself by attempting to prove how much smarter it is than the audience with an unearned, none of this happened, because the protagonist was crazy the whole time twist. The first 2/3 of the movie offer a solid contemporary reinterpretation of the turning of the screw. Then, just as the ending reaches its climax and we prepare to find out if the children are ghosts, the film suddenly cuts back to an earlier scene that plays out differently. It turns out that the entire third act never happened and the governess apparently hallucinated it, despite no indication of her being crazy throughout the rest of the film. I strongly dislike that ending. Story 57. The newest American version of Speak No Evil, the last half hour went completely crazy. I much prefer the original version, even though that ending is very disturbing. However, what they did with the 2024 ending was truly outrageous and not in a good way. Story 58. The true point of the movie does not really emerge until the third act and comes out of nowhere, making most of what happened before pretty pointless. There was no point in Nicolas Cage saving all those people since the world was going to end and they were all going to die anyway. If the real purpose of the movie was to deliver the children to the aliens, why was that not the main focus of the story? A race against time to get your loved ones to a place to be saved would at least make sense and be an interesting tale. Story 59. Saving Private Ryan. A harrowing film, right from the start, about the devastation of war and the bonds formed in the brotherhood of shared terror in the face of death. And the end? The final dialogue by Ryan's wife telling him he had been a good man. It is jarring and unnecessary. We can see he has been a good man just by the people with him in the cemetery commemorating those who gave their lives to save him so that his family did not have to suffer any further loss. I know this may be an uncommon opinion, but it affects me. There did not need to be any dialogue here. Whenever I bring myself to rewatch this film, that is, get through the first scenes on the beach without crying, I stop the film before that line or put it on mute. Just have a scene of the row upon row of war graves, panning out. Do not have the token woman character telling a man who lost all his brothers, both biological and war-created, that he had been a good man. Let us see it. Yes, let us write better female parts. But do not include this line in an otherwise phenomenal and gut-wrenching film about the shared terror of the Second World War and the bonds of brotherhood formed there. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.